somebody just say, let's get back to 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. I do appreciate that. A little random side fact. Welcome to winter. Hopefully everybody has their shorts and t-shirts out because it's going to be almost 70 by the middle of the week. I really enjoy when it jumps into winter. Does anybody else love when it actually flips over into the official winter? Yesterday was the end of fall because December 21st, today, is the first day of winter. Why is it you love winter?
Well, I like this part because now the sun's going to start coming up.
It does. Days start getting longer. And we start gaining just a few seconds every day for the next couple of days. But then we start making some big leaps towards the middle of the end of January. But yeah, so last night was the actual longest night of the year. Today's the shortest day of the year. All right. And interesting enough, because this talks about, the times and seasons starting in 1 Thessalonians 5. So let's go ahead. We're going to look at the first 11 verses of this. So I will go ahead and read the first 11 verses. Our ceiling mics are still a little bit quiet, a little bit quieter than normal. So I will read them, and we'll read this, and we'll talk about it. 1 Thessalonians 5, 1 to 11. But concerning the times and the seasons, brethren, you have no need that I should write to you. For you yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so comes as a thief in the night. For when they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes upon them, as labor pains upon a pregnant woman, and they shall not escape. But you, brethren, are not in darkness, so that this day should overtake you as a thief. You are all sons of light and sons of the day. We are not of the night nor of darkness. Therefore, let us not sleep as others do, but let us watch and be sober. For those who sleep, sleep at night, and those who get drunk at night. But let us who are of the day be sober, putting on the breastplate of faith and the love and the helmet of the hope of salvation. For God did not appoint us to wrath, but to obtain salvation through our Lord Jesus Christ, who died for us, that whether we wake or sleep, we should live together with him. Therefore, comfort each other and edify one another, just as you are doing. That was from the New King James. If you have I think the ESV reads pretty similar. So as we look at this, is there anything in this chapter you definitely want to talk about? It's one thing that we want to make sure. Are there any discussion questions or anything in this that we would definitely want to make sure that we hit this topic while we're here today, because our time goes pretty quick once we get started. All right. I like the way it starts out, is because as it ended chapter 4, Paul talked about, the rapture and some of the facts about this. And then he starts this with, but concerning the times and the seasons, you have no need that I should write to you. So what does this tell us about the Thessalonians? And we've seen this throughout the entire first book. What is one thing that... I'm going to try not to laugh at you. What is something that Angie's got new contacts in. She's trying to buy focal contacts. And, she's up here like all squinty face. So I'm going to have to not look at her, or I will bust out laughing every time. What is something that we've seen throughout this book about the Thessalonians?
It seems that they understand what they've been told in the past, and they're doing good things.
Yeah.
And that there's nothing necessarily that they're trying to focus on what they're doing wrong. And it seems like throughout the pattern, Paul's like, you're doing good, just keep on doing it, and do a little bit more.
Yeah. So it seems like from a doctrinal standpoint, they were pretty solid in what they were taught, what Paul told them. Because as we see going through here, there's a lot of praise. There's a lot of praise, a lot of encouragement, and a lot of, keep doing what you're doing. Keep building on this. And so we see this with him saying, you have no need that I should write to you on times and seasons. So they have a pretty good grasp that, how this is going to happen and what's going on. So when we see the world, has anybody spent much time looking at the end of the world, secular predictions? Has anybody spent much time looking at them and actually watching any of the videos, reading any of the predictions as far as how they get to their thoughts? Has anybody looked at that? Yes, no? No? Andrew has. Andrew, what's something about them that is, do they seem believable?
Most of them seem like it's latching on to one small thing where the whole thing is founded on one verse or one word in one verse, and from that it's a series of complex calculations to get to the date that they want to choose. And what you find is that there's as much variety in dates they get picked as there are methods of calculating.
Right.
And those same people then revise their calculations multiple times over when they keep passing the dates that they predicted. Well, I missed this. Well, I need to recalculate this. Oh, I forgot about this verse.
Yeah.
So it's just it's a very non-scientific science that they try to apply.
Yeah, it is. I mean, they do. They take one little thing and then they extrapolate on it. And they say, well, based on this, this is what this means. And you find this rabbit hole in this logic. Now, one thing about them, most of them they're convicted, they're very passionate, and there is some sort of believability. So the question was asked, why would Christians be attracted to that? I mean, why would we find interest in that? And why would some even believe that? That's great.
A great deal of time trying to study what I'll call conspiracy theories.
Mm-hmm.
And there seems to be a desire to know that which your neighbors don't know. You want to be the person who's got the inside edge, the person that's got the advantage on understanding something over someone else. It's kind of exciting. It's kind of shows how smart you are. There's lots of reasons why people are attracted to that. But you've got to be a real student of the news because they have to keep revising it every time there's a new conflict somewhere or a
Right.
new skirmish breaks out between two nations because it changes their predictions.
Yeah.
And so I also see someone who's very concerned about the world here and now and not necessarily as focused on the world to come. If you're all the time trying to beat the odds and be ahead of the predictions and know when all this is going to fall apart, I don't see the great advantage to knowing when I'm going to die or when the earth's going to collapse or any of that stuff because my behavior should be my behavior regardless of what I feel about those things.
That is a great point. But yeah, we all want to have that, certainty. A lot of us believe, most people believe that it's going to happen. But man, if you could know when, and it's not something that appeals to the majority of faithful Christians, because again, we see through that, and we know in Scripture. I mean, what does the Bible tell us over and over and over? And it says it, right here in the first few verses of 1 Thessalonians 5. What is the one thing that we know about the end of, two facts that we know about the end of time here on this earth?
We know it's coming and we don't know when it's going to be.
Yep, we know it's coming, but we don't know when. Those are the two certainties. And we see that. We see that. Jesus talked about that when he was on the earth. Talks about it in 1 Thessalonians. I think, 1 or 2 Peter was mentioned in here. It talks about it. This is not a one and done concept in Scripture. Paul tells the Thessalonians, and it's said many other places, that we don't know when. And the reference is like when, labor pains come upon a pregnant woman. Yeah, because yes, Jim.
We don't know when, but we know it's closer than it's ever been.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's closer now than it was when we started. I mean, that is one thing that we do know. We are marching, ever so slowly towards eternity. And we have no idea, but we do know the fact that it is coming. So the reference here is, like labor pains that come upon a pregnant woman. What is it about labor and You know, there's one fact about labor and a pregnant woman, that when labor officially starts, you can't stop it. You know, I guess you probably could medically. I mean, I guess we could get super technical, say there are medically ways for us to stop it. That analogy may not be great. But naturally, you know, when it's time for a woman to give birth, you know, that process happens unless we intervene and stop it. So those that have been pregnant, you know, would it be convenient if you could just, you know, pick the time that you're going to have your baby? Just say, okay, here's when it works out for our schedule and life. Would that be something that would be beneficial? Sure. I mean, it would. I mean, it would be nice the more stuff that we can control. But this is something that we can't, that we cannot. He talked about the fact that eternity is placed in our hearts. It's mentioned in Ecclesiastes. Do we find even those that are not faithful members to God, or even atheists, do we find an eternity placed inside of them? Do they have any thoughts or draw to, you know, the end of time? Do we see that in people that may not even be, you know, faithful members of the church?
I mean, whether it's the end of time or just I think everyone has moments where they look ahead and wonder what happens to their life or what happens after their life. And so even people with no religious expectation will try to make sure there's a legacy for them, or they want to go to Mars or something because they're looking toward a distant future and trying to preserve humanity in some way.
Yeah. I think one of the things we do see in life is the desire for something more. So those that don't have faith, you know, one of the things that you see with those that are more atheist is they're trying to figure out how to make us live forever. How can we regenerate our body into something else to extend life? Because they have the approach that when you're dead and gone, you're dead and gone. Now, do you think with the culture that the Thessalonians lived in, you know, again, we talked about it was, you know, highly prosperous, highly pagan. Do you think that they ran into and dealt with people that had the stance of, you know, when life's over, life's over? You know, you see that there's some of that in the pagan culture. So that, again, culturally, I think this is something that they dealt with, which is, you know, one of the reasons I think Paul put this in here is to just encourage them, you know, as you see people that have this approach and have this thought pattern, you know, here's what Scripture says. I was thinking about this yesterday as I was going through this. And this letter that was sent to the Thessalonians, we have the ability, we have the benefit of just being able to go back and read this and compare it to what was written in, you know, the Gospels and what was written in, you know, 1st, 2nd, 3rd Peter. We get to look at all this together. These first century Christians didn't have this. This letter was sent to them. They didn't have access to all the Scripture that we had. And so when they got this, it was really something that would, you know, help define their lives, because they couldn't just read it every day. They didn't have access to it like we do. And so their lives, it was really, I think, important for them to, you know, be together, encourage one another. And I think that's why we see that in what you guys talked about on Wednesday. The importance of being together and the importance of really growing together, because we see this. Is there any benefit to God not telling us the end of time?
Yes.
Why? If Samantha says emphatically yes.
Because if we do, then most people, maybe even all of us perhaps, might do what we want for quite some time until the time comes closer, then all of a sudden we would be anxious about it, whatever, and then turn around and try and live right. So our living right wouldn't even be sincere.
Yeah. That'd be fair. I mean, there'd be a couple different approaches. We might be somebody that just likes the rules and lives the right life, but we know this is coming. And so the anxiety to change could be bad for us. Or we could be someone that says, hey, I got time. I can do it later. Or somebody says, look, I can live selfishly however I want now. I can change in this period of time. We can almost schedule and prepare that. So I do think it's beneficial for us. Again, God put eternity in our hearts and put this desire in us. And we are encouraged to walk rightly. So what are some of the examples that Paul told the Thessalonians? What is the contrast? There's a contrast between those that are, faithful and those that are of the world. What are some differences that he said? So we are to be of the day, as one of the examples. They're to be of the night. They are of the night. And they say, people that don't have this hope, they talk about, peace and safety and, security, and they have this nonchalant attitude towards the end of time. Why do you think that is? Yes, Greg.
I'm going to argue this is not a time discussion. I think the end of
Okay.
chapter 4 was. I think chapter 5 is more the seasons of life they live in. And that's where you get the warning or the admonition that when you are, when destruction comes upon you suddenly, it's like a woman's birth pangs. She knows she's going to go through that. They see something hanging over their horizon that they know is going to be troublesome. So eternity's not hanging over their head the way that the times and essence are. This is current news. Chapter 5 is a transition point, I will argue.
Okay.
Then to say, you've got all these things around me. A pregnant woman doesn't leave town if her doctor's at the hospital that's in town. She won't leave town. Ask me how I know. And so with that hanging over your head, or that expectation, this admonition of peace and safety is not just like a general greeting. And I think that's what he's trying to get us to understand. Those are real words of encouragement when you can see impending problems. And that is why he says encourage one another with peace and safety. If the world ends in the blink of an eye, I don't have a lot of time to worry about it if that's what happens.
Right.
Right? It's done, and I'm transformed, and I don't have to sit and worry about it, and what are my kids are going to go through, or what my grandkids are going to go through. They're talking about something that's right here and now, that's pressuring their life, and that's how a Christian lives with peace and safety. Means no matter what is going on right now in your life, or that is threatening or hanging over you right now, you've got to turn to God for stability. You've got to put this in God's hands. I had a 3-hour conversation with a friend yesterday about instability in life and how you have to just say, I'll do what I can do, and I can't do any more. And I'm going to put it in God's hands as to what happens. It's just, we've got to live that way, that the things that are worrying us can't stop us from doing what we are encouraged to do.
Right.
Live for the day. Be awake. Be aware of your circumstances, but also keep working. Diligently working. It was the problem of some who said, well, Jesus' return is any day now. So I don't have to have a job and I don't have to feed myself, and they were putting their knees under other people's tables. And the word was, teach them how to work for their own food and quit feeding them when they won't work, because, and so here it is, don't look at life like, well, it's all
And you could even have that approach to life in general. At the end of the day, this is not my home, so I'm going to do nothing. But yeah, we're encouraged to work and to be active.
That's pretty defeatist for someone who professes to be a Christian, and I think that's very counterproductive just to say life has no meaning.
Right.
Because that's what our Christian faith gives us, is meaning for life. That's first and foremost, is we have a purpose. But I think the concern here is when there is something hanging over your head, that purpose doesn't go away, and that focus doesn't go away.
Well, I do think in here there is a contrast between those of the world that go nonchalantly, not even concerned about trials, because it talks about how, the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night. And it will happen instantly. And then it says, there are those that are going around saying, peace and safety, everything's fine. And he says, but you, don't be that way. Be focused and be intentional. I think that's what the point of this is. But I do agree. I mean, it is we have to be active. We have to be very intentional. But we can't just be sitting around, worried about this. Do you sit at home worried about the thief all the time? Because it comes as a thief in the night. The things we know about that is there's no time to predict it. But if all you do, kind of to Greg's point, is if all you do is sit around and worry about it and focus on it and it paralyzes you, you're not going to be productive. And so I do see kind of that connection to this. It says, therefore, in verse 6, let us not sleep as others do, but let us watch and be sober. Oops. And then it talks about putting on the breastplate of faith and the helmet of righteousness. For God did not appoint us to wrath, but to obtain salvation. Any other thoughts?
Maybe a kind of a simple way I've thought of it. There's almost 4 categories that some can fit into from these verses. Those who are ignorant and afraid. Those who are ignorant and not afraid. Those who know and are afraid. And then those who know and are not afraid. And the world, he's saying, is ignorant. And the world can be ignorant of what happens next and afraid of that. And if that's the case, you're probably living in a state of looking for answers. You
Right.
probably don't want to remain in that state. Anyone would be uncomfortable in, I know I am ignorant and I'm afraid of what I don't know, so I need to look for answers. The world could also say, I don't know what happens next, but I've made, I'm at peace with that. And I think those are the people he talks about in verse 3, where they're saying, no, there's peace and security. They don't know what's going to come, but they've just adopted a message of just don't worry about it.
Right.
Find peace in your life by just assuming everything will be fine, basically, because they don't know what to assume. And I think that's his strongest warning to the Thessalonians is don't adopt their message of peace, which is a peace in spite of ignorance. He says to them, you are in the light, that implies knowledge. They see, they are in the darkness and not able to know what comes next. But they could still, there's still 2 reactions to that. You could have the knowledge of what comes next and be afraid of that.
Right.
And that's the person who knows they're not prepared for what's coming. They know it's coming, but they know from their fear and they know from examining their life that they are not prepared for it and they don't want it to happen. That person has certain actions that they ought to be prompted to take to, how do you make yourself be ready? How do you make yourself be at peace for that? And then the final category is the ones that he instructs to, you're in the light, you're living in the day, and you live with a structure of living sober, living and living aware and living a working life, because not only do you have the knowledge, but through living a certain way that you are prepared, you also have peace. So the world and the Christian can preach a message of peace and security.
Mm-hmm.
But it's based on different things. One is based on, I'm just going to accept that, I hope nothing bad happens, and that's where I'll find peace and security. And the other says, I know something bad will probably happen, but my readiness for that is also a message of peace and security.
When you look at those four examples, example option 1, there's some people that are looking. Option 3, there are people that desire to be better. Option 4 has confidence. Option 2, the ones that are like, look, it's going to end, don't know, not worried about it. If life ends and existence is gone, I'm going to enjoy it while I'm here. Those are the ones that I've had some conversations with those that are of that, and they're a lot of them are very at peace, very confident, and just very comfortable with the fact that, look, this is all I get, and I'm okay with that. And those are the hardest ones to have any, those that don't really believe in eternity. Those are the ones that are the hardest to have any influence with. But yeah, I kind of like those. I kind of like that analogy of those.
Maybe that's the people who he says, the ones who get drunk at night.
Yeah.
It's like they're in ignorance, but there's kind of this cavalier, while in their ignorance, they can just throw away their cares and throw away their concerns, and there's a false security. So you're right, that is a rut that people get into where they think they know something that they can rest and be secure in, and for them that's, well, I'm okay with not knowing, and that does hold a lot of people in a spot where they don't want to change, because they think they have something that gives them security.
That's great.
I'm not so old that you all haven't heard the phrase ignorance is bliss
Mm-hmm.
before. You've heard that. So ignorance is bliss, and to Andrew's point, the world kind of teaches us that not only do they not know, but that these things are unknowable. Because there's however many hundreds of flavors of Christian church in this country alone. Then there's Hindu, Buddhism, all these things, Muslim faith. And when you try to weed them all out, you'll never get it. You'll never get it right. And so having a little knowledge is sometimes more dangerous than having true knowledge. And they're just comfortable with saying, because the world can't figure this out,
Right.
what makes me think I'm going to have any better success? So it's best off just to stay in this mode of, I don't care to know about these things, and I choose to be ignorant because I can be more peace of mind than if I know enough to worry about it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Jim.
Yeah, beginning, not everything God said and did, it seemed to be, man wanted to do the opposite. So I wonder if he'd give us a day and hour when he's coming, if some man wouldn't have denied it.
Right. Yeah, there'd be people out there going, that's not the case. They would argue against that. Yeah, if God gave us the exact time, there would be people out there that would be arguing against that time.
Jesus said he didn't know what he said.
Yeah. Yeah, Jesus, that's true. Jesus on this earth said, look, I don't know. The day and the hour, that is for the Father alone to know.
He didn't know, the angel didn't know, the Holy Spirit sanctioned that.
Yeah.
So that's the one limitation in the Godhead.
Yeah.
If we don't know the second time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Jesus said that is for the Father alone to know. I had a thought during Andrew and Greg's discussion. I don't remember what it was. Yes.
Well, when it comes to the end, whenever that may be, being so anxious up to that point, whenever that may be, it breaks my heart because being ready can just reduce that anxiety.
Yeah.
And I like the thought of, yes, being ready. So it's like having people over for dinner. You make ready. When they come, you enjoy yourself. And you don't have to worry about stuff because you're prepared.
Right.
And there's some people who will never be prepared. And it'll be chaos at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really sad. And there's some people who won't be prepared, that'll ease into it. Those are those people who are just okay with it.
Right.
And I like to think that as Christians, there's that song, Are You Ready for the Judgment
Yeah.
Day? Yes, we are. I appreciate that.
But the interesting thing about personalities is, and you've probably everyone have experienced this. You know, kind of going to your example, having people over for an event or a dinner or something you planned. There are different levels. There's those that over prepare and are very, very confident. There's those that over prepare and are still a nervous wreck. Like what if and what if. And then there's those that under prepare and that are overconfident. That would be me. It's like, what are we going to feed these people? I don't know. We'll find something when they get here. Or we just kind of have a general idea. I am an under-prepared and overconfident type of person. It drives my wife crazy. And then you have those that just, want to make no preparation at all. But you do see that. You see those that even in the Christian faith that are prepared, but they're still nervous about it because change is hard for us. Oh, I remember my thought. In this that, we talked a little bit about the end of time thoughts that we see. Imagine in this pagan culture, all the different end of time scenarios that these guys were dealing with. And I wonder if that's not why Paul put this in here. Like, look, you run into all these different discussions and all these different, fables and thoughts and learnings and people out here proclaiming all this in this pagan society that, don't worry, you well know this is going to come as a thief in the night. Be prepared. This is what it's going to look like. And, live your life, dedicated and in good service and stand apart from those that live contrary to what we've taught you. Does that make sense? Yes, sir.
End of time can vary from person to person. Like my first wife, she passed away after 42 years of marriage. For her, that was the end of time.
Yeah.
Me, it continued.
Yeah.
You gotta be prepared, as she said, you gotta be prepared for that day of judgment.
It's true. Because if you look at this, the day of the Lord is going to be can mean two different things. It's either going to be when we all, join Jesus at the end of time, or the day of the Lord for each one of us, when your life's done, you can't change. You can't change what you've done. So your, we'll say, quote unquote, day of the Lord, at the end of our life is when we're going to stand, in judgment for what we've done. And I think that's a good analogy. I think that's a good thing for us to consider. And it goes back to consistency with what Paul told the Thessalonians in this book, in this chapter, is, it's going to come as a thief of the night. You're not going to know. So live righteously. Walk soberly. Don't live as those that, are living for the moment, that have this false sense of security. And I think that's a message for us as, for those that have their health, those that have their youth. Because what's the one thing that, when you're young and healthy, what's the thing that you think about the end of your life? It's probably not going to be tomorrow. Statistically, it ain't going to be tomorrow. Statistically, it ain't going to be this year. It could be a long time off. But we don't know. We don't know. We do know it's coming, but we don't know when. All right, the last question he had, and this is one I definitely wanted to talk about. According to verse 11, it says, therefore, comfort each other and edify one another just as you are doing. In what ways can we, encourage and edify each other? Because in here it talks about to live righteously, put on the breastplate of faith, the helmet of righteousness, and to walk worthy. How can we do that? Or how could they have done that in the first century in Thessalonica? What are some practical ways that we can encourage one another and to edify one another? As, yeah. All right. Samantha, then Margaret.
So I kind of had a thought, and when he talks about like comfort one another and edify each other, sometimes being comforted is edifying in a way. Because, it kind of takes, you'd have to be in a, I guess, place of discouragement to need comfort in the first place. And so I think comfort, getting comfort can be edifying in and of itself.
Okay. Margaret?
The word encourage to me is the word. There's so many ways that just telling people that you care about them. People are afraid to say love.
Yeah.
They don't, and I don't know, they put a different connotation on it, because love is obviously there is affectionate love, and we do have affectionate, but we have the love that is concern and care and encouragement, and I just think that it's so important for us to make an effort to do that. But we also need to be sure that we're sincere
Right.
about it. Encourage people well in the things that they do well, help them to do better in other things. But just, we didn't have services on Sunday, and I was sitting Wednesday night. It was a terrible loss. And to be here today and to see and to be with the people that I love and who love me, that is absolute edification.
Okay. The Proverbs writer says, a word fitly spoken is like what? Apples of gold and settings of silver. I remember that because I think back, oh my goodness, long time ago, they actually did a ladies' thing about that. Apples of gold and settings of silver. And when you think about that, a word fitly spoken, sometimes we may not take the opportunity to, say something that's on our mind, on our hearts. And we won't have an opportunity back. People talk about, funeral homes. And again, I've been blessed enough not to really experience death of anyone close to me. But people that go through that, do they remember what you said when you were there? Not typically. But they just remember your presence and your comfort and just the fact that you cared enough to reach out. You cared enough to do something for them. You cared enough to show up. I think that's a lot of that. One of the ways that we can encourage and edify one another is just be together, spend time together. Show people by little things that we're thinking of them. One of the guys that I know challenged us one time to just, once a week, reach out to 3 contacts in your phone that you haven't talked to in a while and just send them a text. Very simple. Just say, thinking of you, and just a short little note. And something like that, the beauty about what we have is we have the convenience of technology. It's also a curse that we fight. We have the ability to stay connected pretty quick. If I want to send a message, I can send a message to anyone all over the world instantly. It's a great blessing. And so that's one way we can encourage one another. We can edify one another, and we can, really have an impact in each other's lives. Is just be willing to be proactive. So again, that's one thing that in this chapter is all about being active, not being like those that have a false hope, but intentionally walk knowing that our time is going to end, or time is going to end, and that we don't know when, but we do know that it will come. So, all right, we'll continue on Wednesday. I appreciate your input, and then we'll finish out the second half of chapter 5.